spoke beside the menu under soft cafe light. We first spoke beside the menu with rain on the street. You asked what I was choosing, then smiled across from me. A simple little question turned the evening gold. Now the same menu waited for a story growing old. The bass moved under gently. The memory came through. Nothing brought me back like we first spoke beside the menu. We first spoke beside the menu, softly in the rain. We first spoke beside the menu, where it all became. We first spoke beside the menu, warm bass underneath. I am not starting from that moment. I am learning how to breathe. We first spoke beside the menu, counter light in view. The first hello stayed gentle while I move through you. First words still heard. Manulight, old night. It did not mean returning. It only made me kind to the version of myself who met you there that time. I do not need to change it for pain or control. We first spoke beside the menu, still touched my soul. Maybe first conversations can rest where they began. Maybe old beginnings can leave an open hand. We first spoke beside the menu. Now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. We first spoke beside the menu, closing lights glow. The first words soften and I let go. We first spoke beside the menu, under soft cafe light. One receipt for an old story, folded in my hand. One receipt for an old story, printed small and pale. A cup, a time, a table, and a night that did not fail. I placed it by the saucer like a little paper proof that I came back to the first place and sat here without you. The bass moved under softly. The ink looked soft and blurry. Nothing held the past like one receipt. make it sacred. It only made it true. Some moments need a timestamp before they loosen you. I do not need to save it for pain or control. One receipt for an old story and steadied my soul. Maybe little receipts can fade like evening steam. Maybe proof of returning can release the dream. One receipt for an old story. Now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. One receipt for an old story. Closing lights glow. The ink turns lighter, and I let go. One receipt for an old story, folded in my The staff swept around my feet with a quiet kind of care. The staff swept around my feet near the old window chair. They did not ask me quickly why I was still sitting there. The broom moved through the silence in soft half-moon lines. I lifted up my shoes and gave the room some time. The bass moved under gently. The night felt bittersweet. Nothing showed the ending like staff sweeping near my feet. The staff swept around my feet softly in the room. The staff swept around my feet under closing bloom. The staff swept around my feet, warm base underneath. I am not fighting with the closing. I am learning how to breathe. The staff swept around my feet, warm lights in the view. The floor became cleaner while I moved through you. Broom sound, calm down. Floor clean, soft scene. It did not feel unkind there. It only made me know the night had work to finish, and I had to let it go. I do not need to stay here for pain or control. The staff swept around my feet and steadied my soul. Maybe gentle cleaning can clear more than the floor. Maybe someone sweeping can close an old door. The staff swept around my feet, now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. The staff swept around my feet, close seat faced the street like it was already gone. Your seat faced the street across the little table, empty but familiar, quiet but unstable. It looked toward the rain light and not toward me tonight, like even wooden silence had chosen outside. The bass moved under softly, the cafe lost its heat. Nothing looked more distant than your seat faced the street. Your seat faced the street, softly in the rain. Your seat faced the street, turning from the pain. Your seat faced the street, warm bass underneath. I am not asking empty places to teach me how to breathe. Your seat faced the street, window in the view. The chair stayed very quiet while I moved through you. Seat still, heart will. Street side, no hide. It did not mean rejection, it only made me see. The room was not arranged now for who we used to be. I do not need to turn it for pain or control. Your seat faced the street, still touch my soul. Maybe empty chairs can point away from past. Maybe quiet furniture can change the room at last. Your seat faced the street, now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. Your seat faced the street, closing lights glow. The chair turns lighter and I let go. Your seat faced the street like it was already gone. Let's sit before the lights changed above the room. Let's sit before the lights turn cleaner and less warm. The cafe lost its softness, like the ending of a song. I held the cup a second, past the final steam, trying not to leave here, still carrying the dream. The bass moved under gently, the staff dimmed the night. Nothing felt more final than the last sip before the lights sit before the lights, softly in the room. Last sit before the lights, after closing bloom. Last sit before the lights, warm bass underneath. I am not drinking down the old days, I am learning how to breathe. Last sit before the lights, counter in the view. The cafe changed color while I move through you. Last sip, soft grip. Lights change, hearts strange. It did not taste like comfort, it only tasted true. A little warmth was ending the way it had to do. I do not need another minute for control. Last sip before the lights and steady my soul. Maybe final sips can close a gentle scene. Maybe brighter lights can show what memory means. Last sip before the lights, now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. Last sip before the lights, closing lights glow. The cup turns lighter, and I let go. Last sip before the lights, changed above the room. I stayed past the final customer in the closing cafe. I stayed past the final customer when the last coat left the door. The room became much bigger than it ever had before. The chairs were upside down there, the music almost gone. I sat with one old story, trying to move on. cafe. In the closing cafe. Milk foam lost its shape on the surface of the cup. Milk foam lost its shape slowly in the light. A little heart dissolved there before the end of night. It spread into the coffee like a memory set free, soft around the edges, just like you and me. The base moved under gently. The cup felt almost safe. Nothing showed the change light. Milk foam lost its shape. Milk foam lost its shape. Softly in the glow, milk foam lost its shape, letting something go. Milk foam lost its shape. Warm base underneath. I am not keeping every outline. I am learning how to breathe. Milk foam lost its shape. Table in the view. The picture faded softly while I move through you. Foam fade, heart stay. Shake on, move on. It did not mean no beauty. It only meant things change. Even careful little patterns cannot always stay the same. I do not need to save it for pain or control. Milk foam lost its shape and steadied my soul. Maybe fading shapes can still feel warm and kind. Maybe soft dissolving can calm a tired mind. Milk foam lost its shape. Now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. Milk foam lost its shape. Closing lights glow. The surface turns lighter, and I let go. Milk foam lost its shape on the surface of the cup. They turned the sign to closed, and the street looked back at me. They turned the sign to closed with a gentle little hand. The letters faced the rainfall like the room had made a plan. No one said turned the sign to closed. Softly in the rain, they turned the sign to closed. Closing quiet pain. They turned the sign to closed. Warm bass underneath. I am not begging rooms to hold me. I am learning how to breathe. They turned the sign to close. Door light in the view. The cafe ended kindly while I moved through you. Close sign, soft line, door glow. Let go. It did not mean rejection. It only meant the night had reached its final minute under warm cafe light. I do not need to stay here for proof or control. They turned the sign to closed and steadied my soul. Maybe closed signs can still be gentle things. Maybe endings come without breaking anything. They turned the sign to closed. Now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. They turned the sign to close. Street lights glow. The doorway turns lighter, and I let go. They turned the sign to close. And the street looked back at me. Our table became just a table under brighter lights. Our table became just a table when the chairs went up. No magic in the corner, no story in the cup. The window was a window, the street was only rain. I looked at where we started and felt less afraid. The bass moved under gently. The room felt finally stable. Nothing set me free like our table became just a table. Our table became just a table, softly in the light. Our table became just a table after one long night. Our table became just a table, warm bass underneath. I'm not worshiping the old place. I am learning how to breathe. Our table became just a table, cafe in the view. The room became ordinary while I moved through you. still here. It did not mean forgetting, it only meant more air. The place could stay behind me without keeping me there. I do not need to name it for pain or control. Our table became just a table and steadied my soul. Maybe ordinary things can be the kindest truth. Maybe places lose power when we finally move. Our table became just a table. Now the ache feels slow. The memory is still tender, but I let pressure go. Our table became just a table. Clothes and lights glow. The cafe turns lighter, and I let go. Our table became just a table under brighter lights. I walked home without coffee through the quiet rain. I walked home without coffee, with my hands in my sleeves. The cafe closed behind me like it wanted me to leave. The cup stayed on the counter, the table stayed inside. I carried only weather and a softer kind of goodbye. The bass faded under gently, the street felt less heavy. Nothing felt more honest than walking home without coffee. I walked home without coffee, softly in the rain. I walked home without coffee, leaving quiet pain. I walked home without coffee, warm bass fading low. I am not keeping every sorrow, I am learning to let go. I walked home without coffee, streetlight in the view. The cafe closed around me, and I moved through. No cup enough. Walk home alone. It did not mean no sadness, it only meant more peace. The old table stayed behind me, and the night began to breathe. I do not need it perfect for peace or control. I walked home without coffee and steadied my soul. Maybe leaving empty-handed can still feel complete. Maybe home begins on a quiet, rainy street. I walked home without coffee. Now the day feels wide. Remember fate closed around me, and I keep breathing.